Here we are at Sippawisset. The tide's out. The wind's a little high, but it's always a challenge. You never know what's going to happen. And so here we are. And everybody get your paints out. It should be a fun day. Okay, here we go. The first thing I do is establish the distant ground and the horizon line so I can work my perspective against that. This is going to be a scene in Truro, Mass, down Cape. And this boat and these different things in the foreground, they weren't even there. So I just added them to the scene to make it more interesting. It's actually it's on Pamet River, which goes out to the ocean. So I'm drawing with burnt sienna. And the reason I'm using burnt sienna is because it's transparent. So if I screw up, I can just wipe it off real easy and then continue. Now when I draw, what I do is I try to move my whole arm. So I'm just establishing, where the water lines are and the shadow of the boat and this, that, and the other. Just kind of a bare bones thing. I'm going to have a little guy sitting on a boat there. Now, what I do is I usually go to a scene, then I take some pictures, and I figure out what colors I'm going to use. And I pre-mix as many colors as I can before I start to paint, because I'd like to have the thing kind of flow. And if I have to stop and mix and look and mix and look, it kind of kills the flow of it. And when you're outdoors painting and the sun is moving across the sky, you don't have a lot of time to mess with it. You have to just really react. So just like designing the painting, I'm designing the colors. For example, if I want a sunny day or overcast day or something that I just like the color combination. This little paint box that I have, what I do is I strap it to my lap. It's right in my lap, and it's real small. I'm working on a 16 by 20 size board. I actually go down to the lumber yard, and I use Luan. It's 1/8 of an inch Luan. and they cut it for me at the lumber yard, and I'm able to get something like, let me think, like 12 panels out of a 4x8 sheet. And I like the board because a lot of times I'll use a palette knife, and I push on the board, so it'll take the pressure and everything. So now I'm putting the sky in, and what I do is I look at the sky, I look way over my left shoulder and see what the sky color is there. Then I look way to my right and see the difference, see which way the sun is lighting up the sky. And at first I do not blend at all. I just make separate swatches, panels of color. I have 7 different brushes, different sizes from 12 to 4, and depending, I try to use the biggest brush I can for what I'm painting, and I try to use one set of brushes for the darks, another few brushes for the lights, and try to keep those separated so I'm not mushing up the paint when I put it on there. Now, the further the object or the scene is away, the distant ground, that's if it has if it's against the sky, for example, and I want to make those dunes out there look like they're further away, I add a little bit of the blue of the sky in them, which pulls that towards the sky, and I do the opposite for the foreground. Here I am using my trusty tissue just to get things down really fast, just to get a general tone, and then I can adjust it after I get rid of the white or the. I prime my board with a very light gray. So if I put a light color on there, so I can judge what the value is difference, because the lightness and darkness of a painting and where they're located on the painting is the most important thing. And then after that, it's different colors. And the other thing I was trying to do on this particular painting is, if I have, let's say, a yellow in the background for the dunes or something, I try to repeat that in the foreground a little stronger, and so the eye automatically shoots back to the distant ground, so it's connected. I've learned over the year there's different little tricks that you can do to move the viewer's eye around in the painting. by doing the little figure first before I paint the boat behind it, I can cut in around the figure to adjust the form of the figure in case I need to cut some of the figure down or add more to it. The other trick I do is if I want something to be really light or bright, I put something dark behind it. And vice versa. If I want something dark, I put something light behind it. See how by putting that dark background, it makes the hat look whiter. So what I usually do is paint the darks first and then the lights afterwards. But in a case like this, I wanted to get that figure going before I put the dark behind it. One of the most important colors on your palette is white, so you can lighten other colors. The next most important color is gray, because gray kind of helps glue everything together. Because if you put gray next to red, for example, and you squint your eyes, the gray will look like it's kind of green. It'll take on the complementary color, the opposite color of what you're painting. And if you're going from, let's say, red to green, unless you want the green to really jump or the red to really jump, it has to kind of go through a neutral phase, which is the gray. Sometimes a color won't go on as dark or as completely saturated as you would like. Sometimes you have to let that dry and then go at it the next day and double coat it. But I try to get as much done as I can in one session. I'm working actual time on doing this painting, and the whole painting is going to take 25 minutes. before I go on and go back and work on the edges. The edges are when you go from one color to the next, those are the edges. And sometimes edges are real sharp, like the one on the boat there. And sometimes they're real soft, like in the water behind the boat. The transition is not as strong. So you need to learn how to make soft edges or hard edges or broken edges, as many combinations as you can think of. And what I'm doing now is I'm putting the reflection of the land mass in the water and repeating a double, duller part of that to the clouds. You can see that most of my color that I'm using now at this first stage, they're kind of grayed down. They're not real bright colors. If you go out in nature, you'll see that you have to adjust the colors from the tube. If you use just straight color from the tube without varying it a little bit, it makes it look cartoony. I always decide on a color, and then I just stick it on there. If it's not right, then I adjust it. But I just go for it. You can see the colors, how I pre-mixed them here. My palette is basically three primaries, red, yellow, and blue, and I use on the red, I use a warm red, a cool red, and a dull red, and I do the same thing with yellow, and the same thing with blue. And then I can make, from those primaries, I can make the orange and purple and the green. Now, the palette knife comes in handy when you want to do little waves and things, because you can load it up, and then you can kind of smear the back part of the wave where the foam would be. I'm loading my palette knife and then slicing it off. What I want to do is I want to draw the eye to the distant beach of the sand dunes, and having that lighter like that, and make sure I pull into the painting. What's nice about the palette knife, you want to change colors, you can just wipe it off with your Kleenex and put another color on there. I'm going to add a little dark green to the background. So I keep in mind which way the sun is coming from. So on the right side, on our right side, the light is hitting the dunes, and on the left, you get more of a shadow. And also, right underneath the wave and the different little water patterns, I put a little bit of shadow there. Once again, I move my whole arm when I want to put paint down. So I want to bring this side of the boat towards us more, so I'm adding a little bit of light hitting the edge of it. And also on the small boat in front. So I'm only spending about 25 minutes to paint this whole painting, but I probably spent, I don't know, at least a half hour mixing paint. But I can mix the paint in my studio, and then when I go out to paint out in nature, I don't have to. I can just rock and roll and just go with the flow of what I see, which really helps a lot. After I finish a painting outside, I usually just take it home and put it somewhere and don't look at it until the next day. And then if there's any changes to improve it, I make the changes then when I'm fresh. And at that point, I'm just making the painting work. Drawing a little bit of water seeping in on the sand there. I want to use warm colors next to cool colors, so there's a vibration going on. I'm adding that little bit of yellow there, just so you see yellow in the foreground and then in the distant ground a little bit, so your eye is pulled to the background. So there's light that's influenced by the sun, and then there's light that's influenced by the sky, which is kind of the blue. So if something is really dark and it's on the shadow side, I put a little bit of sky color in there to make it richer. So the closer something is to you, the more strong the contrast between the light and the shade is. And the further things go back, they're not as strong, not as exaggerated. Sometimes it's a good idea to know when to stop. Otherwise, if you chase it too much, you just end up messing up what you have. So I'm pretty much done with this painting. I'm just adding a little bit of sand color here. But this is probably a good place for me to stop and just let it be until the next day, and then I'll go back and make the changes that I have to make. So there you have it. Okay, we'll see you next time.